as profound as that technology has been, AI will be more impactful, and it is going to come faster. And the reason is that its applications aren't just in the communications and information area. It has potential application across the board. To some degree, it's an extension of this long trend towards automation, but it's not now just automating, manufacturing processes or the use of robot arms. We're now starting to see these models, these platforms, be able to perform really high level, what we consider to be really high level intellectual work. So already the current models of AI, not necessarily the ones that you purchase or that you just get through the retail chat GPT, but the more advanced models that are available now to companies, they can code better than, let's call it 60–70% of coders. Now, we're talking highly skilled jobs that pay really good salaries, and that up until recently has been entirely a seller's market in Silicon Valley. A lot of that work is going to go away. The best coders will be able to use these tools to augment what they already do, but for a lot of routine stuff, you just won't need a coder because the computer or the machine will do it itself. That's going to duplicate itself across professions. And so it's one of the reasons I mentioned to you when we were backstage that I would argue right now, unless you are really good, like one of the top 1% in terms of understanding how to code, you're better off with a liberal arts education. Because, but here's the reason. I would say that the biggest questions we are going to face as more and more of the capacity of AI gets introduced and it gets into manufacturing and law firms and accounting and a whole bunch of white-collar professions. And it will be just as disruptive as it was for factories and manufacturing in areas like this, steel mills and textiles. What these machines can't yet do, and I don't anticipate we'll be able to do, is tell as good a story or show compassion or be able to inspire a child or build a sense of teamwork and get people to understand and believe in a common mission. So the kinds of, those kinds of people-based skills, human skills that are unique to us, that's going, there will be more need for that than ever. And so that's sort of a bit of practical advice. Now, from a policy perspective, it also means, and this could be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whenever you have big disruptions like this, that is going to require us to reorganize our societies. So it may be that everybody now, not just blue-collar workers, not just factory workers, are going to have to figure out, where do I get a job? How do I get enough income to feed my family? All of us will be facing some questions about, we're producing a lot of stuff, how do we distribute it? And what's fair? and what's not? And how do we get purpose and meaning in our lives? Because work isn't just a way of making money, it's also, and feeding and clothing and housing ourselves, it's also gives us our life shape and direction in a sense that we matter. How are we going to reconstruct that? And that's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be contentious, and we're going to have to figure that out. And then the effects on what is already a problem, which is the death of facts and reason and logic in our information space. We're going to have to figure that out. One of the things about being the first digital president was I was filmed so much. There was so much footage of me talking, so many photographs of me, recordings. I was usually the lab rat. My images were for all these deepfakes. You know, 'cause
it is you right now.
I'm actually here.
Okay.
If it wasn't, there'd be less gray hair, and I'd look a little more jacked. So this is the authentic me.
One way to say this is that within 3 to 5 years, we'll have what is called general intelligence, AGI, which can be defined as a system that is as smart as the smartest mathematician, physicist, you know, artist, writer, thinker, politician, maybe not in the same level, but you get the idea. Just the creative industries and so forth, but imagine that in one computer. Okay, well that's pretty interesting. I call this, by the way, the San Francisco consensus, because everyone who believes this is in San Francisco. It may be the water. What happens when every single one of us has the equivalent of the smartest human on every problem in our pocket? So it means you have the best architect when you have an architecture problem. Another thing that's going on is the development of agentic solutions. And agents are referred to systems that have input and output in memory, and they learn. An example here is that I want to buy another house. I happen to like Virginia. I grew up in Virginia. I say, find me a house in the greater McLean area. Look at that's one agent. Look at all the rules, figure out how big a house I can build. That's another agent. Do the transaction to buy the land. That's another agent. Design the house with a human architect, right? But sort of ignore them for most of the thing, but they have to sign it off. And then I approve it, and then find the contractor, right? Hire the contractor, pay the bills, and then at the end, sue the contractor for lack of performance. Okay? Now, I just gave you the stupidest possible explanation. I just described every business process, every government process, and every sort of academic process in our nation.
So it isn't just the programmers that are going to be out of work. We're all going to be out of work.
No, that's not a consequence. I'll come to that. But the reason I want to make the point here is that in the next year or two, this foundation is being locked in, and we're not going to stop it. It gets much more interesting after that. Because remember, the computers are now doing self-improvement. They're learning how to plan, and they don't have to listen to us anymore. We call that superintelligence, or ASI, artificial superintelligence. And this is the theory that there will be computers that are smarter than the sum of humans. The San Francisco consensus is this occurs within 6 years, just based on scaling. Now, in order to pull this off, you have to have an enormous amount of power. I was here yesterday testifying about this, you know, and we need, like, I can talk at some length about how many gigawatts and how many nuclear power plants and all that kind of stuff we can talk about separately. This path is not understood in our society. There's no language for what happens with the arrival of this. I wrote a book on this with Henry Kissinger called Genesis, which, you know, I recommend, obviously, because I wrote it.
Available online.
Available in your usual places. But the important point is, this is happening faster than our society, our democracy, our laws will address. And there's lots of implications. That's why it's underhyped. People do not understand what happens when you have intelligence at this level, which is largely free. That's the point.
How do we get ready for it?
Well, we start by talking about it. And by the way, on the jobs thing, everyone assumes that automation will eliminate jobs. If you look at the history of automation ever since the looms and 300 years ago, the jobs are changed, but more jobs are created than destroyed. In this case, you'd have to convince me that this time is different. If you look in Asia, where they, for whatever reason, are choosing not to have children, the Asian reproduction rate is in the order of 1.0 or lower. So they're rapidly disappearing. So the Asian countries are very, very quickly automating. The tools that I'm describing will allow the few humans that will be working very hard in 30 or 40 years if these trends continue. The rest of us will be dependent on those hardworking humans. It'll make their productivity much greater.